What up? This is the Sam and Dan Show, WXJM Harrisonburg 88.7, every Wednesday, 6 to 7.
Hello, Harrisonburg. It's been too long.
Yeah, we were off last week. Technical difficulties. We were buried under a few feet of snow out here. It was pretty gnarly stuff.
Right. Dangerous traveling conditions. As rugged and adventurous as we are, we didn't want to risk our health and wellness for that. But we thought about it.
Yeah.
It was a really hard decision to make, but we decided it wasn't worth getting in a snowplow accident, driving out here to the studio.
Also, they locked all the studio doors, so we actually couldn't get in.
Right. So we couldn't if we tried.
Yeah, that was another big part.
But they tried our old strategy of sticking a chair behind the door so we can't get into the recording booth.
Yeah, and it was
usually
extremely
we just
effective.
Use that.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually we just use that on the other hosts so we can record longer.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, we're here today. Back to the good stuff, what the fans demand.
Mm-hmm.
And the topic of this week's show is vampires.
Yeah. Truly spooky, neck-biting ghouls, slurp the blood right out of you. That sort of vampires.
Right. Yeah, classic vampires. Just doing vampire stuff. We're talking Count Dracula, Count Chocula, the Count from Sesame Street, that kind of vampire, the one and only. We're not talking about energy vampires, which are a real danger, but those are just, appliances in your home that are using energy without you knowing it. So
truly, the modern vampire. Although there are modern vampires also, but these are probably more prevalent, far more dangerous, I would say. The energy.
Right, the energy vampires.
The energy
right.
vampires,
So,
I mean.
Right. If you've got the time and that's something you're concerned about, search your house for energy vampires. If it's got lights on when it's off, good chance it's an energy vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And
unplug that jaunt.
Yep, just rip it out of the wall. Just take it out.
Mm-hmm.
That's really all you can do.
Anyways, you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's get right to it.
Okay.
So, Dan, do you want to explain what a vampire is in the traditional blood-sucking sense?
Okay. When we say the word vampire, I'm sure a lot of you guys can conjure the same images, but we sort of come up with a definition for vampire that we're going to be using for the show, and that's a seductive undead predator who sucks the blood out of its victims. And the important part of this definition, of course, is the seductive part, because that is what separates vampires from blood-sucking bats or that sort of thing.
Or like mosquitoes and leeches.
Exactly. Those are not seductive creatures.
They're just inherently unattractive.
Yeah.
Really.
Unlike vampires, who are inherently extremely attractive.
Right. It's just how it works. It comes with the territory. Just pasty skin. Usually wealthy landowners. I can see why people would be attracted to vampires.
Never leave their houses, wear long capes.
Right.
Not bathrobes.
Maybe like lots of wait staff to take care of them because they can't go outside.
Yeah, avoid looking in mirrors.
Right. So they're probably pretty self-confident.
Extremely.
So, I mean, that's just, basic vampire description. But, they don't all wear capes.
No, they don't.
And, all right, I'll let you take it from here.
All right.
Continue on.
So, to add a little bit of credence to this vampire thing, I know a lot of you've heard about vampires, but you're not sure, are these beings real? Are they just myths? Are they tales told to scare kids and convincing them to wear their neck covers every night before they go to bed? And to that I say, there's a New York Times article, just published, 2015.
That's fresh off the press. You could probably touch that. The ink would come off on your fingers like silly putty.
We're talking that recently,
fresh.
folks. In this story, it details the archaeological ventures of some Americans who went to Bulgaria, and they dug up a big grave. And in that grave, they found multiple skeletons with wooden stakes plunged through their hearts.
You would think animal steaks would be cheaper to get. And wooden stakes work too, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it did for them because those creatures were certainly dead. And, of course, I beg the question, if these creatures weren't these people, I should say, weren't vampires, then why would they drive stakes through them? You know, I can't think of a reason.
That's a good question.
Or maybe to hold them to the ground.
Right. Is Bulgaria known for its high winds? Let me look this up in the database. All right. Wixstream database is reporting Bulgaria does not have exceptionally high winds or huge tornado risks. So I think that possibility that they're holding the bodies into the ground to keep them secure from, turbulent forces of the atmosphere. I don't think that makes sense. And for me, that's the only thing I can think about. Yeah. Unless they were playing horseshoe with bodies and could only get one on at a time.
That's another good option. But again, Bulgarians not known for horseshoe playing. That's more of a Mediterranean type deal.
Right. It's just not part of their culture.
Yeah.
So I think that to me proves that something else is afoot here, beyond just holding things down or playing yard games with the fam.
Yeah,
literally.
Absolutely. Okay.
So a little bit of history about vampires. So vampires as we know it today, they really didn't come into question. They didn't become known in the public eye until about 1730.
Yeah.
And vampires, an important thing about them, why they're so hard to get information on, is because they're sworn to a vow of secrecy.
Yeah.
Because if they were discovered, they would be rooted out and destroyed. So as an immortal vampire, where the whole world is against you, really, it's just, count versus world here. They've got a rough life, and I would do my best to stay hidden too.
Yeah, and going on this oath of secrecy thing, we're going to get into this a bit later, but throughout this week I've gone undercover on a known web forum where vampires hang out and they talk. I've gone undercover there as Dark Spaniard, and I've been finagling, speaking with them. I've made many vampiric friends. Dare I call them friends, really, because here at Sam and Dan Show, we are against vampires.
Very strong anti-vampire stance.
Yeah, exactly. And, of course, I befriended them on this site for the express purpose of learning how to defeat them and how to vanquish them from this mortal plane. But, again, we'll get into that deeper later on.
Dan, funny you mentioned that. I also joined a website designed for cold, heartless, blood-sucking villains. Turns out after a couple of days of research, I was on lawyersmeet.com. So, so unfortunately, I had to get rid of most of my research.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we didn't know about vampires as we know them now until about 1730, as we said. And actually, most of the modern vampire legend comes from the Transylvania region. So the reason that is because all societies throughout history have independently established vampire folklore, which we'll also talk about.
Yeah.
But specifically, this was when the printing press was becoming popular. People were able to read. Literacy was on its way up in the 1730s. And these were folklore traditions over just passed down generation to generation, the dangers of vampires over speech. And they got transcribed and, those books were distributed. They got some good deals, started cranking out those paperbacks. People were eating up the vampire story because it was just so exciting and something different and exotic.
Exactly.
And a real danger. So that's why people just wanted to be informed.
And going along with this huge increase back then in interest in vampires, people discovered many ways to actually become vampires, and these are all documented. Of course, we had to dig really deep in the database for this information because our database was actually started in the 1700s on loose leaf paper, and it's slowly been transcribed into a computer format for us.
Right. But it's backbreaking work, but that's what our massive staff is for.
That's what all the interns are for. Unpaid, overworked. You know how we do it.
Transcribing literary text into computer text so we can pull it up in PDFs.
Much of it written in ancient Gaelic. They don't even speak ancient Gaelic.
They're doing their best out there, really.
But anyways, where I was going with that, a lot of people think, the the only way to be a vampire is if you get bitten by one.
And that's just not true.
It's just not true. There's so many different options to becoming a vampire, and we don't condone any of them. Again, we're vehemently anti-vampire. But Sam, do you know any of these, or should I cover some?
Okay, yeah. So I'll dive into this.
Okay.
So an important note, listeners of our show, you probably saw this coming. The dedicated fans out there, you know what I'm about to say next, but there is guaranteed information that the first vampires are actually established in the Mediterranean region.
Wow. Mediterranean vampire?
Right. It all ties back to the Mediterranean.
Always.
So,
everything.
In Greece, in Italy, these are the big vampire hot spots, so to speak, or more like cold spots because they don't have a body temperature.
It's very true.
Like lizards, similar to lizards.
Yeah.
But there's no lizards in the Mediterranean.
That's true.
As far as I know. That's like a Galapagos thing, right?
Let me look it up in the database.
Right.
Boop, 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 boop.
So,
yeah, that's a Galapagos thing.
Oh, yeah. Big lizards over there in the Galapagos, but not in the Mediterranean.
None. Not a single one.
Going off that, the first vampire was actually Greek. His name was Ambrosio, and he was cursed. Let me see it. All right, the database, they're actually real-time transcribing this from Greek into English, so I can read this off to you.
Let's see it.
Name Ambrosio, Italian-born adventurer, ended up in Greece. Okay, all right.
And let me just point out here, it's important to say that back in those days, adventurer was a job title you could have. Not a very lucrative business, I'll say, because adventuring... there's no buried treasure or anything anywhere because there's really not a whole lot of anything. But still, could be kind of fun. Maybe go to the Galapagos.
Right. Well, what I've heard is that it's really, the money has moved from being an adventurer to being an adventurer capitalist.
Oh.
Capitalist.
Okay.
So you sell adventures to other people.
Okay.
For the highest bidder.
Yeah, of course.
And if you have to make something up for them to discover, bury some of your own treasure. Who cares? You're getting tenfold of the buried gold back onto, direct deposit. So, adventure capitalist, fat paycheck.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you guys are out there looking for jobs in the Valley, maybe start an adventure capitalist business.
Yeah, or an intern here.
Right, or intern here. You won't have a job, but you'll get 3 pieces of bread a day.
Yeah. And
all the water you can drink.
So much knowledge, your head will explode. It'll be seeping out of your ears, all this dense information.
Right, that's the real payment. And that's something you can't get anywhere else. Just going through the WXJM records, just having that privilege, it's a real honor.
All right. We're going to hit you cats with a cool PSA real quick. We'll get back to you in a second.
Today's episode, Rattlesnake at the Pond.
Oh no, a rattlesnake! Sassy, help! You will, but first you want to talk about shelter pets? The majority of pets in shelters are there due to owner-related issues like divorce or allergies. Save us, Sassy! What, Sassy? You wish you were videotaping this? Sassy!
Sassy is brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org. Remember, adopt.
What up, what up, what up? This is WXJM Harrisonburg, Sam and Dan Show, 88.7.
Also available to stream on WXJM.org or on our SoundCloud or YouTube channel, The Sam and Dan Show. Just give that pop a quick goog, and you'll be able to find that lickety-split. All right.
Anyways, getting back into it, we were talking about Ambrosio, the first vampire. Very seductive name. He was an adventurer by trade.
Right. I'm just feeling seducted by this writing right now, I could say.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, little backstory. First thing that happened to him, very unlucky dude. Sun god Apollo cursed him to never be able to go out in the sunlight again.
Yeah, that's just unlucky.
So, if you're a World of Warcraft player, you probably might not notice any difference in your everyday life. Or a computer science major such as myself.
Yeah.
I mean, it would take me a couple months for me to realize I'd been cursed in that way.
And I got to say, that's doubly hard on the Greeks because everybody there has got beautiful olive skin.
Oh, absolutely.
All those Mediterraneans, what a shame to be the one super pale guy who can't go out in the sun. What a shame.
You'd be a freak.
Yeah, an absolute freak, which probably drove him to becoming such a monster. But go on, Sam.
Right. So his next stroke of bad luck happened when he accidentally gambled away his soul to Hades. It doesn't say here what he got for it or what he was trying to get for his soul or what Hades did with it afterwards. But so at this point, he's got no soul, whatever that entails.
Absolutely.
Next curse, Apollo's sister, Artemis, Greek goddess, very famous goddess of the moon and hunting. She decided he didn't have hard enough luck yet. Greek gods are real famous for this.
Yeah, just really pick a target and just wail on them.
Right. When it rains, it pours with the Greek gods. That's for sure. They will kick you when you're down, spit in your face,
and then take your soul.
Right. That's just what they do. But she's the goddess of the moon and hunting, and she made it so Ambrosio's skin would burn if he touched silver. I guess they used silver to hunt back then. I'm not really sure what that's about.
Me neither, really.
I guess the
can't even
moon's
begin
kind
to
of
speculate on that.
silver-ish.
Silver back then is probably cheaper than iron.
Right, that makes sense to me. So Artemis, as evil as they were back in the day, she decides to take pity on him and grants him immortality, which,
it's a pretty decent caveat, I'd say.
But, I mean, you got to live cursed the rest of your quote-unquote life.
You got to live in the Mediterranean as a pale man for the rest of your life. No one's going to be into you.
Right, that sucks.
Everyone's tan and beautiful.
If I were him, I would have just moved to Iceland. He would fit right in.
Yeah,
or truly. Antarctica.
And never mind. I won't get into Iceland yet.
All right, but boy, next week, listeners, we'll have some good intel on Iceland. We're sending researchers there. They're on the plane. They got their parkas on. They got their snowshoes.
Yeah, West Virginia Rob's inbound already. Trust me. Have we? Okay, let's get back to vampires.
West Virginia Bajark when he comes back. That's for sure. All right, so the vampire was also granted speed and strength to become a hunter whose skills rivaled that of Artemis herself. So immortality, super strong strength, very fast guy. I mean, things could be worse. But eventually he moved to Italy as a full-fledged vampire, the first vampire, and ended up in the city of Florence, which is where the first vampire coven started. People traded their souls for vampire powers and immortality.
Yeah.
The whole shebang.
Yeah,
Civil War erupted, big diaspora of the vampires, went to different places all over the world, blah, blah, blah. That's how you can find vampires today. All right. Yeah.
That's the spread of vampires. Just a quick bit of history. Again, there's so much more we could go into there, but we don't have the time. We're limited. So
we only got 1 hour to pour all this knowledge into your brain cup.
Yeah,
so to speak.
We're picking and choosing just the juiciest little nugs of info, and we're sending them to you over the airwaves. So we talked a little bit about the history.
Actually, before we get too far away from this, so remember, Ambrosio did start off Greek, and I think some sort of vampire curse maybe worked its way back to his homeland for whatever reason. And according to Greek folklore, you can actually become a vampire, not just by being bit by one.
Yeah.
But there's lots of reasons. Number one, being excommunicated. So if you get kicked out, you're done for it, vampire. Desecrating a religious day. So it's Greek Thanksgiving. Wait, that's not Greek Christmas.
Yes.
And you didn't buy anyone presents. Boom, vampire.
Yeah.
All right. Committing a great crime.
Boom, vampire.
Vampire. And the worst of all, dying alone. That's instant grounds for vampirism. Yeah. So I'm on track if I move to Great. Anyway.
We're all in a lot of danger here at the Sam and Dan Show.
Things are not looking good.
A lot of our interns are starting to really sweat, and I got to say I'm joining with them. That's a terrifying prospect.
Not going to happen, though. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
All right. So anyways, the final one. Worst way to become a vampire. Having a cat jump across your grave once you've been buried. Yep. All right, so little known fact, this is why they started building fences around graveyards to prevent cats from wandering in and accidentally creating massive vampire armies.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Take over civilization.
Yeah.
That's what the graveyard fences are for, but also because people are just dying to get in.
Okay. Good stuff, Sam.
All right, you got it from here? All right, you got the next section, Dan.
Okay, so now we've already sort of covered this topic a little bit, but are vampires real? Question for the ages, and in short, I can give you the answer. Yeah,
Obviously.
All of our sources point towards them being real. We got loads and loads of information on them. But allow me to pose this question. For years, people were telling tales of large squids in the ocean, so large they could pull ships down to the bottom of the depths. Mm. And they were written off as fools, squid-believing fools. Mm. And, who are the fools now that we've discovered the giant squid? Them.
Everyone
not the people
else
who believed in the Kraken.
Right, everyone except them.
Exactly. So I posed the question, how could this not be true for vampires also? There's something out there that's sucking blood, pale white, lives alone, died alone, probably a vampire.
That could be anybody, really.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just thinking there's been several instances where scientists, even in the modern age, have declared something extinct.
Yeah.
And bada bing, bada boom, some fisherman pulls it up out of his nets. It's not extinct anymore. It's thriving in some small community somewhere. Mm-hmm. Or it's some guy trekking through the rainforest, big centipede lands on him. Oh, I thought these were extinct.
Yeah.
Not.
Boom. Not extinct.
Boom.
And
pranked.
Boom. You're centipeded.
Still alive.
And you're in for a rough time.
So until someone can prove that vampires don't exist, possibly by bringing by a non-vampire, definitive proof of no vampires existing by the studio, go ahead and try.
Yeah, really go ahead and try.
But you can't.
Yeah.
So,
and going off of this, some of you out there listening, you hear these descriptions of a vampire, pale white, extremely lonely, an outcast from society, and you may be thinking, am I a vampire?
Right.
And to that, we're going to pose some questions, a sort of questionnaire, just a quick one. Answer these questions honestly, and if you get a lot of yeses, I'm sorry. You're probably a vampire.
All right. So it looks like we got...
And if you are a vampire, we're coming for you.
You'll be sorry. We got 8 questions here. So, Dan, you want to get you get the odd numbers, I'll get the even numbers. What do you say?
Sounds like a plan. Okay, so first question. If you're a vampire, I ask you, does your skin burn immediately when it comes into direct contact with the sunlight, silver, or holy water? So if you're answering yes to that, keep that in mind. That's 1 out of 8. Sam, the next one?
Yeah, so mental tally of vampire points going.
Mm-hmm. I'm sitting at a cool 0 right now.
Right, I'm also at 0. Okay, so number 2 is your skin considerably colder and paler than anyone else you know. Mm-hmm. So if you think you've got a cold for the past 16 years or so, as long as you can remember, you got sweaty hands and it's transparent skin, could be a vampire. But that on its own, not enough evidence to prove vampire or not.
And allow me to clear up the first 2 points. If you just happen to be Irish and the first 2 points apply to you, you can write them off because there is a caveat here in our list. If you are Irish, those 2 would probably apply to you. But again, you're probably not a vampire. Mm-hmm. But diving into the third question, do you suddenly and inexplicitly have a strong thirst for human blood? Again, huge tell that you're a vampire if you suddenly get the urge to, bite a man's neck.
Or woman's neck.
Yeah, or, again, all inclusive.
Right.
Yeah, if you're trying to suck human blood, chances are you're a vampire.
All right. I'm still sitting at a cool 0 out of 3. So for number 4, do you get angry, upset, or otherwise worked up? Or do you suddenly find your canine teeth growing much longer and sharper than before? So I'm not sure what that would look like. But I think if your teeth were suddenly getting so large, you couldn't speak normally anymore.
Yes.
Or you develop a vampire accent.
Blah, blah, blah. It's a vampire accent.
Right. That's what I was going for.
Develop a vampire accent.
A vampire accessoire? Something like that.
Okay.
So that could be a red flag.
The next one. Are you much stronger and or faster than even the world's top athletes?
Okay, if this is you, we need you in the studio for our research team. We've got a lot of stuff to carry on our expeditions.
Yeah, and it's just faster. And we trust our runners more than we do cars. Because cars can get pulled over, but you can't pull over a man with a backpack running through the woods.
Right. You can't stop a rickshaw or a backpack guy. One of those tandem bicycles.
Yeah. So again, we could make use of you if you are a vampire in that respect.
All right. So number 6, are you more than 100 years old and still look like you're no older than 25? Mm-hmm. So that's an easy one to miss. One day you wake up, you're accidentally 135 years old. You're like, oops. You know what I mean?
Time flies. Am I right?
To be young and beautiful again. But if you're a vampire, you're still beautiful.
Old and beautiful.
Right.
And let me ask, does your heart no longer beat or beat at such incredibly low, slow rate that by all tenets of medical science you should not be alive? Again, if your heart rate is that low, come see us, because we'd love to have you in studio. A man with such a low heart rate make a great bass line for our band as well.
Mm-hmm.
Plug you into an amp, see what you got.
Right, get the stethoscope on there, feed it through the amps.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Yeah,
we need you in the studio. All right. So number 8, last question. Do you recall a time when you were bitten by a vampire, drank a vampire's blood, or received some kind of blood transfusion, after which you experienced an incredibly painful physical experience, and after which you felt completely different in just about every way?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say with that last one, if you're getting blood transfusions and the next day your whole body hurts, get that blood out.
Yeah, I'd say.
Do not go back to that doctor.
Yeah,
all right.
I would say your main concern is not, am I a vampire? Your main concern should be getting to a hospital and getting that blood out of you, because that's clearly not good blood.
Right.
And there is a final question. If you glitter in the sunlight, and again, this specifically mostly applies to Irishmen, then you probably aren't a vampire. But again, vampires burn in the sun; they don't glitter.
Right.
Like Irishmen.
Mm-hmm. Or if you've got particularly oily skin,
Mm-hmm.
like some sort of grease creature, you may be a swamp man, but not
or
a
a
vampire.
Mediterranean.
Right. A Mediterranean person.
All options, or just an Italian man. Again, if you're Italian, you're probably not a vampire. Way too much garlic in all your foods.
Right. You'd be pretty safe over there.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So, what's interesting about that, using the same checklist that's been proven through the eons, you could say.
Yeah.
Nearly every culture worldwide has their own accounts of vampires.
Yeah.
So that gives a lot of weight to the vampires being out there, because independently over the whole globe, over the course of thousands of years, hundreds of cultures have all been independently coming up with the same checklist to check for vampires. And why would you make such a detailed list if there is nothing to check it against?
Yeah, I have to 100% agree with you there. This list that we actually got is from the 1800s. It was dug up in an old monastery in the Mediterranean.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say it holds a lot of weight, okay? Because they definitely had a vampire problem over there. And I'm sure they used this list to diagnose many vampires and eliminated them. Anyways, we're reaching the 30-minute mark here.
Time is now 6:30, 18:30 for the military folks tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to the troops.
Yeah.
We salute you.
We support the troops here, even if you are a vampire.
I'd say half support if they're a vampire troop.
Okay. Okay.
Very against vampires. Very pro the troops.
Vehemently. Yeah. Anyways, there's some things going on in the Berg this week. We're going to read through them. If you happen to live in the Berg and these things sound good to you, feel free to go to them and enjoy enjoy your week. First thing coming up, March 29th, which is tomorrow, Thursday night at the Little Girl Collective, 8:30 p.m. Or 8:30 p.m. We got the New England Patriots, Buck Gooder, and to be announced all playing.
I love to be announced.
Buck Gooder, also a classic. New England Patriots, season didn't go great, so I guess they're switching to a more lucrative business.
They're playing at bars in Harrisonburg now.
Yeah, big money there. I hear some bands clear at least 25 a night, $25. So, yeah. Anyways, also coming up Friday, March 30th, we got 2-Inch Astronaut, Your Ex's Pets, and Kettling playing at Crayola at 9 p.m. Again, that's Friday.
All right, so huge event coming up.
Big Daddy event.
This is Friday, April 6th, and Saturday, April 7th. Get excited, folks.
Boom.
Great event. Mac Rock, all caps, XXI. So, we're getting so big and so impressive. We're getting into Super Bowl numbers. I guess that's why the New England Patriots are in town.
Probably.
But
They're probably going to try to win this one.
they might have mixed it up a little bit.
We'll see.
So this is featuring the Royal They, Sound of Ceres, Cassilis, Negative Gemini, Battlemaster, McKinley Dixon, and many, many more. This is basically the biggest indie music event going on in the Berg yearly. It's really awesome. If you guys would like, you can check that out online. There's no website here, but just Google it, and you'll probably find it. It's an awesome event.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Yep.
Sam and Dan Show. Time is now 6:32.
That's right.
You're listening to WXJM Harrisonburg, 88.7 on your FM dial. Also,
Sam and Dan Show.
every Wednesday, 6 to 7.
Mm-hmm. Okay, getting back into vampires.
Dan, it's kind of funny that the New England Patriots have come up so much.
Yeah.
Because there was actually a very large New England, America vampire craze.
Really?
So big, this is when American vampires became a thing, which, led to a lot of the culture we have now surrounding vampires.
Oh, absolutely.
And a lot of the media.
Yeah.
So Mercy Brown was a resident of Rhode Island in 1892. So, a short 400 years after Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the documented cases in the U.S. of exhuming a corpse to check for vampire tendencies.
Huh.
So basically what happens is everyone back then got tuberculosis.
As everybody does back then.
Right.
Everyone had tuberculosis.
Back in the day, they called it consumption back then, which is kind of like it's a little bit of a euphemism, I would say. That it's really covering up a pretty big, threatening-sounding word, tuberculosis.
Yeah.
But anyways, so lots of people fell victim to consumption and were buried, obviously, as victims of diseases usually are.
Of course, yeah.
And months after she had been buried, Mercy Brown was dug up. And although she had died around the same time as two of her siblings, they were decomposing normally, but she was found to have fresh blood in her veins, still functioning organs,
snap.
and showed almost no decay
Okay.
at all. So naysayers will say, well, the other two were buried underground in dirt, and she was buried in refrigerator-like conditions in Rhode Island.
Yeah. Haters will say.
Right.
Haters. Haters to the legends. Non-believers.
Right. Late February, I mean, why would a giant stone box in the winter not... It just doesn't make sense. So obviously she must have been a vampire.
That's the only really plausible explanation.
And so they exhumed her, and her heart was cut out, burned, and the ashes were mixed with water and given to her sick brother to drink. They were doing good until that last part there.
Yeah, they really took it a bit overboard.
Don't drink vampire ashes. In fact, this is very PSA, another PSA.
Yeah.
Don't drink anybody's ashes of any kind of dead body, I would recommend.
And I got to say, a lot of times back then, doctors were just spitballing. They were just, they were coming up with ideas to cure things on the fly.
Right. Just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah, pretty much.
And, they learned 2 months later that it didn't work when he died. So,
with everybody having tuberculosis, they figured something's got to work. So why not burn this heart, add it to water, and feed it to the kid? It's as arbitrary as giving him any sort of medicine back then. As most medicine back then was just ground up bark and
leeches.
spit Yeah.
Bloodletting.
Slugs.
Kind of a tragedy. If he had just held on for 40 more years or so, he would have been around for the invention of antibiotics.
Unlucky.
He was so close.
Anyways, we got a call coming in right now.
All right. Blue
take
lights
this
on
one.
in the studio. Thank you, Dan. Let us know what that caller has to say once you're done taking that in. So, yeah, New England incident, pretty big deal. It shook us to our core, and this was only a few years after the famous Salem witch trials. And, you know, vampires and witches kind of related. We might do another show on that. I'll write that down here in the database, you know, potential notes. But, yeah, powerful magic at work. Well, actually, vampires are not based on magic. But, yeah. All right, so Dan's still on the phone.
All right, I'll relay that information to Sam. Thanks for calling, number one.
Okay, yeah. Just a reminder, we love our fans. Thanks to everyone who tunes in. You are what makes this show what we are, so thank you for listening.
All right, I'm back. That was a call-in from number one fan. As you can imagine by the name, he calls it pretty often. Always full
all
of
the time.
insightful information. Anyways, he was saying that actually exhuming bodies, taking their hearts out, burning the hearts, adding the burnt heart to water, and giving it to patients was actually a common practice back then. It was how they used to treat vampirism. When they thought someone was a victim of vampirism, they used to give them that. Again, most of the time when people thought they had vampirism, it was tuberculosis or some sort of just really any
easy mistake to make.
Or the common cold or the flu or some kind of nasal infection. Really, any of those things dangerous back then.
Right. I can kind of see where you're coming from. I'm imagining myself right now as an old-timey person playing hoop and stick in the backyard. You know, my horses are grazing right under the big apple tree.
Perpetually gray everywhere.
Yep, everything's gray. And I notice my skin is cold and clammy, and I'm getting weaker. And now everyone knows sometimes you got to break some eggs to make an omelet.
Yeah.
And before becoming a vampire, maybe you get weaker.
Yeah.
And so they were probably just trying to look on the bright side, like, oh, this must mean super strength is coming, when actually it just meant super weakness. So, easy mistake to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I see where they're coming from.
And again,
for sure.
it could be, a big boost to someone who has tuberculosis. You know, you tell them, hey, you don't have tuberculosis, you have vampirism. Here's a heart to consume.
Right. You're going to be immortal. You're going to get super strength and super speed. You're going to inherit a whole castle in Transylvania.
Yeah.
That's some good news if I was sick.
And it'll stop them from complaining about their tuberculosis all the time.
Right. That'll shut them up.
Anyways, that's really all we're going to cover. This is called the Mercy Brown incident. That's really all the information we're going to cover off of that. And unless you have anything to add.
I was just going to say, so kind of going off the New England vampire tradition, the Patriots went from sucking the blood out of people, you know, in the New England area, to sucking the air out of balls during practices at the football games. So just something to keep in mind there. Anyways, moving on. Some people, all right, so in popular culture these days, some people seem to think, thanks to the books of a certain author, which we won't mention, but there's a bunch of them. They're called Twilight. Some people think vampires glitter. And you know what? Completely untrue.
Yeah.
Because the whole series was based on a dream that the author had. And, you know, this isn't a bad idea. If you're writing a book, you know, go ahead and use your dreams as inspiration.
Yeah, why not?
In fact, in regular life, use your dreams as inspiration for what you can accomplish.
Always dream.
But in this case, it might have been a bad idea, in my opinion. So she saw a woman laying on the field in a mountain valley and a glittering vampire hanging out over her. So, you know, good start to a book, but not vampire fact.
Yeah, really not even remotely close to real vampires who are ghoulish, usually smell bad, very sweaty.
Right, cold and clammy.
Yeah.
Coughing a lot.
And going off of this, I have to say, we have a special guest in studio with us today. I think he's preferred to remain anonymous name-wise. But he's got some interesting vampire information he wanted to save to us, so I'm going to patch him in right now. We'll call him Guest B. What up, guest?
Hello. What up?
Hey, welcome to the show, guest B. As you know, there's the Sam and Dan show.
Mm-hmm.
I see you're a big fan. How'd you hear about us?
Yeah, where'd you get the Sam and Dan T-shirt?
Well, I'm actually from around town. I live in Harrisonburg.
Really?
Yeah.
And our associates told you, some of our interns brought you in, said you have some interesting information concerning vampires?
I
Is that
saw a vampire
Really?
in Harrisonburg
Really?
a couple nights ago.
Are you
when the
sure
moon
you
was
weren't
out.
hanging out at ISAT? Saw some of the comp sci majors?
It was late at night
Mm-hmm.
when I saw the vampire.
Where'd you see him?
It was a her.
Her.
A female vampire here in Harrisonburg.
Definitely not
Oh.
a comp sci major.
A
then.
womanpire, right? You could say.
Yeah.
Well, she was glittering,
Glittering.
Oh, yeah?
and she was tall and pasty white.
Tall and pasty white. Oh,
Interesting.
did she say anything? Did she acknowledge you? Did she make a move for your neck, or how far away was this vampire? Close enough to touch? How large was she in comparison to, say, a banana?
We only use the banana scale. It's the only historically
Accurate scale.
calculable scale
Yeah.
because back in the day, they didn't have feet, inches, meters, centimeters, whatever. They just had bananas.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, bananas have never changed.
Yeah, every banana. I'm sorry to go off on a tangent. Guest B, I really apologize. But one banana throughout history has remained the same length of one banana. So, again, it's the most accurate measurement we have available to us, and that's, of course, why we're using it.
Mhm.
Okay, back to you, guest.
She was about 20 bananas high and 3 bananas wide.
Have you seen a banana recently? I don't know if those numbers add up.
I know what I saw. She was
20
tall.
20 tall, 3 wide. You heard it here, folks.
Hmm.
Tell me, guest B, did she make any vampiric noises? Do any flying?
She
What was she doing?
she flew behind me out of nowhere.
Okay.
She
Oh my
whispered to
goodness.
me.
What'd she whisper?
She whispered, "Wire some money into my account, and I could give you a castle, Transylvania."
Okay.
Oh, man, dude.
That-
That sounds like typical seductive undead predator to me.
Emphasis on the predator part.
Right. I'm glad you escaped that scary encounter. And so you weren't, obviously, she didn't seem to think that you knew she was a vampire. She was probably preying on the unsuspecting
Mhm.
because otherwise she would have killed you. You would not be
Mhm.
here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the vampire's quest, is to remain secret. So what do you think? Do you have any sneaky tactics to escape that situation? How do you respond to being offered a castle?
Well, I was very close to accepting it.
It is quite the deal.
That sounds good to me.
What
But-
made you not accept it?
But I'm from Harrisonburg. I ain't leaving Harrisonburg. I want a
Amen.
castle here.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, that is a good point. Harrisonburg, the Valley, it's just where all the good stuff's going on, where cool things are happening. Like, for example, the weather.
Yeah.
So,
Which I'm going to hit you with right now. Guest B, thanks for hanging tight. We'll bring him back in a second. So right now in Harrisonburg, we're looking, it's about 61 degrees outside. A little cloudy, not too bad. Tomorrow, it's going to be rainy, though. Low of 49, high of 61. Thursday, oh, wait, tomorrow is Thursday. I got my days backwards.
right, yeah, you're reading today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's going to be a scorcher, folks. It's
Yeah.
going to be high of 77, low of 57. You know, seeing as how just last week 57 was an ambitious high, I am really looking forward to this. It's going to be grilling weather. I'm going to be out there.
Vampires are going to be hidden away, brother.
Right, exactly. They've had it too good for too long.
Mhm.
So, I'm
It's our
glad.
turn. Anyways,
Right.
after that Friday, it's gonna be rainy again, but we're looking at about 60 degrees out, so not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, full sun, 60 degrees again. Should be a nice day, a good day to get out. Throw some frizz, hunt some vamps, that sort of thing.
Right.
Monday, we're getting back into some mixed, possibly some slushy rain.
Oh, that sounds nice.
49 degrees. It's going to be nasty out.
All right. So what I'm seeing here is a roller coaster throughout this week.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's the peak, so everyone get on board. and get out there, get active, get some blood flowing.
Yeah.
But not enough blood to attract a vampire.
Yeah, diving right back in. What up, Guest B?
All right.
What up? What up?
So where did we leave off?
He, of course, Guest B mentioned that he was offered a castle and he rejected it. And I have to pose a question: if there's a vampire in Harrisonburg, where would they have a castle? Because again, vampires can't inhabit any other home except for a castle.
Right.
Have you seen any sort of castles around Harrisonburg? Have you heard any tales of castles mysteriously appearing in woods?
I have heard of tales, castles appearing in the woods. I haven't seen one in my eyes.
You haven't.
I think from a certain perspective, the closest castle I know of is VMI. And, that's just not a fun place to be, which sounds like the perfect place for a vampire to hang out. Just an absolutely dull environment.
Surrounded by absolutely lonely people. Again, just a field day for a vampire.
Right, you could just blend right in.
But going off the idea, possibly is there a vampire in Harrisonburg? We have to ask the question: how do we, as Harrisonburgians and Americans,
Ich bin ein Harrisonburger.
dispose of these vampires? How do we keep our streets safe? How do we keep our goats unsucked? Let our children play with sticks and hoops outside?
Right, without threat of vampire assault?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, all right, Dan, I'm glad you asked, because this is where things get really exciting, folks.
Hot dog.
So, if you are looking for ways to kill a vampire beyond the emotional sense, we are here for you. So, how do you kill a vampire? Easy. There's basically 5 ways, and the easiest one is also the most convenient one, and that's with sunlight. So step number 1, if you got sun, you're having fun. Just remember that little rhyme when you're getting attacked by vampires.
When it's vampire time, remember that little rhyme.
Right. So remember, if you're thinking back to the original vampire, I forget his name. Anton Julio. Ambrosio.
It's like ambrosia.
Right.
With an O.
That makes sense.
Male.
Right. So Ambrosio, if you remember, he was actually cursed to stay out of the sun even before he became a full-fledged vampire and started his own vampire den. So sunlight burns a vampire in about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Does absolute searing pain, rattles them to their core. They just can't stand it. And there's not enough sunscreen on the planet to save the vampires from the sun. So
yeah.
What would you say way number 2 is, Dan?
Well, the sun is good and all, but as we've seen here in the Berg, it's not sunny every day. You can't depend on the sun to protect you every day. And of course, that's why we at the Sam and Dan Show we always suggest you go with the wooden stake technique. It's tried and true. People have been doing it for years. Van Helsing type deal.
Blade from the movie Blade.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Again, if you're carrying around wooden stakes and you spot someone, he's walking around in the middle of the day, he's got an umbrella up, he's pasty white, he's got a frown permanently glued on his face.
Maybe some kind of anime shirt on to avoid suspicion.
Don't immediately attack him just yet. Again, do your research beforehand. Make sure that he really is a vampire before you stake the fellow. Because if not, it could be a felony.
Right. That ain't good. And,
No.
I'm not sure if there's any actual legal protections for vampires,
No, there
seeing
isn't.
as how they're inhuman. And just as chimpanzees don't have rights under the law, perhaps vampires do not as well.
Yeah.
But
we can't help but speculate.
right, we just don't know. So another thing, tried and true method. Now, this isn't really killing a vampire per se. It would work. Silver. So silver, very valuable metal. Vampires are attracted to wealth, so how ironic they can not touch silver. So they're literally incapacitated by silver chains. They can't break it no matter how small the chain or how strong the vampire. That just not a chance. It's got to be solid silver, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
It also stops vampires' rapid healing factor. So normally, if you attack a vampire with a traditional weapon that's not coated in silver, they're able to very quickly recover from that and heal exponentially quick, much like Wolverine. Yeah, so like I said, probably not very economical to make a sword or some kind of big swinging object out of silver. But if you can get a net or handcuffs or chains out of silver to bind the vampire and keep them captive long enough to be disintegrated by the sun, that's your golden ticket right there.
All right,
metaphorically, because it's made of silver. So it's your silver ticket right there.
Going off of this weapon stuff, we're getting a couple signals from Guest B. He's got something to throw into the ring. What do you got to say, brother?
I haven't seen the vampire again, but if I do see her again, can I make some weapons to kill her?
What?
Handheld weapons?
What sort of weapons did you envision?
Something with maybe garlic or silver, maybe a dart.
You know, there actually are confirmed cases of self-defense specialists attempting to make an anti-vampire weapon. The result of that was pepper spray, which is pretty good on pizza, but unfortunately they never managed to make a garlic spray. It's just too volatile. You can't keep it in a bottle like that. But if a vampire is coming at you and you've got some garlic cloves, perhaps kind of stuff a tube sock with a clove of garlic, and get your flail going, get your flail on, and beat the vampire with the garlic sock. Would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and going off of that, I just got a call from another very dedicated listener. And she posed a question, or not so much posed a question, but offered a suggestion to us. If you're walking around, you got wooden stakes, and you see that man walking around. He's got an umbrella, an anime T-shirt, and he's pasty, and you're trying to decide, should I stake him or not?
Right.
Perhaps hold a mirror in front of him, and if his reflection shows up, don't stake the man. Let him go on his way, because he's got enough problems. But again, if
I think looking in the mirror would just be one more problem for such an individual.
Yeah, I mean the sort of mental toll that would take on him, truly more than enough damage. But anyways, if the reflection does not show up, blast that man with a stake.
Straight through the heart. That's just how it's done. Maybe if you got some kind of crossbow or compressed air cannon to launch wooden stakes, you could have sort of a ranged attack. But because vampires are so fast, they might be able to dodge that. So really best to go restrain them with silver chains, and then hand guide that.
Yeah, really.
Stick.
Make sure you're accurate on that. Don't want to risk missing, especially because wooden stakes are expensive nowadays.
Right, it is more money than you would think. A nice mahogany stake, got some good weight to it, fine grain, feels good on the hands. That's gonna run you like $45.
Yeah, absolutely,
easily.
Absolutely. So yeah, those are some ways you could take out vampires. Really, if you need to. There are more. Sam, he's looking at me really knowingly.
Well, yeah, I said there's 5. We've only covered 3.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't know we were hitting them all.
All right,
sounds good.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying. There's also fire, just traditional fire, like you would burn yourself on.
Yeah, of course.
That works obviously because there's nothing out there that's resistant to fire, as far as I know.
Yeah, I can't think of anything besides fire.
Right, more
water.
Fire. That's a good point. Or stone. If you're going up against a stone golem, don't use fire.
Don't use fire.
Not gonna work.
Yeah, use some sort of water attack on him.
All right, and then finally the last one, tearing its head off. Pretty self-explanatory. But Dan, let's hear about your undercover adventures in the vampire web, so to speak.
Thank you. So, in doing my research this week, I stumbled on a sort of underground vampire chat room. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted there. It's sort of...
It's hard to recollect.
Yeah. It's an online sort of social media platform only for vampires. Again, I'm not going to mention the name because that could blow my cover. And I've worked myself deeply into the community, and I really don't want to risk it. But yeah.
What do you say?
Amongst that community, it's been guaranteed that vampires do exist. I've been speaking with many of them. Some of my top contacts, and I don't mind giving you the names of my contacts. Again, these are just screen names online. They could be somebody else completely different in person. One man I've been talking to very closely, Tubula Laughstein.
That's a menacing vampire name. For sure.
Absolutely. It's a he. He's been a member of this vampire group for some 10 odd years. And again, I haven't gathered a whole lot of information. It's been a hard fight, really, working my way into the group. I've been using the name Dark Stallion.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I'll keep you guys updated on my travels as I dive deeper into this vampiric world and try to figure out what makes them tick.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, while I was describing this, we got a call, Sam.
Right. Yes, we did receive a call from one of our callers. A lot of vampire hunters tune in because they know where the quality content is at. So
Yeah,
thank you, fellow vampire hunters, for giving us your advice. Our caller suggested checking for vampires with an ultraviolet light. So although vampire skin is able to discern between candlelight and sunlight,
They definitely can.
ultraviolet light is an important component of sunlight.
Yeah.
And if you hear sizzling, if it sounds like bacon breakfast in the morning when you're shining somebody with your ultraviolet light, that's a vampire. That's good to go steak territory.
Yeah.
So just remember, skin a sizzling, that's a staking. No. So, and that's a good tip because, at clubs, when you're trying to get into bars and clubs,
Absolutely.
they check your ID with that purple flashlight. That's an ultraviolet light. If one of your quote-unquote buddies getting in the club with you burns his hands on that flashlight,
Yeah.
he's a vampire,
Yeah.
and you're in for a bad time.
You
Or
see-
she.
You see your friend, he walks up, he hands the ID, a little bit of the blue light rushes over his finger, and it sizzles. You hear that distinctive sizzling. The bouncers sort of ignore it. They think it's sort of a weird deal, but they let the man through. Make sure you get up close to him on the dance floor and just slide your steak into him, Take him out, really for the good of the community. I know he's your buddy, but if he sizzles under that UV, you got to stake him.
Right.
And those
Just
are just
to be sure.
rules to live by to avoid vampires taking over your entire town, turning everyone into vampires, and then everyone will be perpetually lonely, which is a side effect of vampirism.
But just a disclaimer, folks. The Sam and Dan Show and Wickstrom are not responsible for any accidental stakings.
Yeah.
So make sure you are 100% sure of their vampiric status. Remember, use the eight checklist
Yeah,
that we
absolutely.
gave you. And if they're checking every box,
Then
that's a
hit 'em.
staking.
Then it's staking time. The staking hour is now. So hit them hard, hit them fast, take those vampires out.
No mercy.
So, yeah, that's our show. Unless you got something else to add, Sam.
Why did the vampire bring his golf clubs to the hospital?
Why?
Because he heard they were having a blood drive.
Okay. What sort of ship does a vampire sail across the sea?
I don't know. What?
A blood vessel.
Wait, what?
Like a vessel?
Oh, like
like-
blood vessels.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yep.
Guest B, do you have any vampire-based humor?
Humor.
Signal.
No, I do not.
Guest B is very stern, man.
Okay, well, sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
And if you see that vampire again, let us know. We'll stake her for
Right.
you.
And, I'm just thinking back, based on Guest B's recollection of that, sparkly in the light, tall, pale. I've been in a few parties like that in the darkness where someone has lunged for my neck. And, it is it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So I empathize with you, Guest B.
Yeah.
You're a brave person for coming out. So
Thank you.
is there anything you'd like to say to the fans tonight?
Impart to the millions listening.
Okay, that's a no from Guest B.
Yeah, Guest
But
B.
thanks for listening, everybody. This is WXJM 88.7 Harrisonburg. Sam and Dan Show every Wednesday, 6 to 7 p.m. Every Wednesday, weekly Wednesday.
And check us out online, too, wxjm.com.
.org.
.org. Pop that live listen button.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, peace out, folks. Thanks for listening,
Yep, and stay tuned for the next show to come on.
which is after us.
Yep. Bye, everyone.
Hit it.